It's a good thing the rest of your multiverse figures have knee articulation. Here's your look at the brand new McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse DC Rebirth General Zod. Once considered a military hero of the planet Krypton, General Dǝvᴆous Zod decided he would rather rule his world than serve it. He launched a failed coup, after which he was exiled to the prison dimension known as the Phantom Zone. Soon after, Krypton exploded, and the years flew by, but General Zod remained safe in the Phantom Zone without aging. Over the years, he's escaped time and time again, and he's used his Kryptonian powers to threaten Earth, all the while declaring that his enemy Superman will die or kneel before Zod. About to start the review for General Zod, but before we do, I'd like to first thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide the sample of the DC Rebirth Zod that we could have a look at in this video. Let's go ahead and grab the ruler now just to see how tall the figure stands. Putting it as close to Zod's head as I can get it, the figure's at about 7¼ inches in height, or 18½ centimeters tall. Seeing as we are looking at Zod after all from DC Rebirth, probably the most fitting comparison we can make is to bring in the DC Rebirth Superman, which has now become my favorite Superman on my shelf. Someone had also asked me what body they used to make the DC Rebirth Superman. And to bring that in now, it was actually the same body that they used for the Superman Infected. Something I was trying to come up with when we were doing the review of Superman. Other figures that we can also bring in for comparisons here are Lobo, also from DC Rebirth. One of my favorite figures also that we've gotten from McFarlane Toys. Just getting him to stand here. And another figure, of course, we can also bring into is Lex Luthor with his power suits. Zod, when you're stacking him up at least with the other Superman and Luthor, he's about the same height. Obviously, you can see he's a lot shorter, though, than Lobo, but I think he still stacks up well with the rest of the figures that we've gotten from McFarlane's team. A few strange things come included with General Zod. More so, it's the quantity of hands he comes included with. We're going to talk about that more in a second. In the meantime, though, sliding the card towards me so I can show you what it looks like. General Zod from DC Rebirth comes included with his own trading card. Again, they are using the figure photography as opposed to the source material. But I got to say, between the background that they've used, the fact that he's standing on what seems to be fallen remains with skulls all around it, I think it's a rather impressive looking card. Now, again, this is pulled from the pages of the DC Rebirth, flipping around to the back. His real name is Dǝvᴆous Zod, with, again, a substantial read-up. You can either pause and read it for yourself, but it is, in fact, the same thing I read at the beginning of this review as well. I've pretty much done all the job for you. Going to put that to the side. Zod also comes included with, yes, the same familiar display stand we've gotten before with the DC Multiverse stuff. A black circular display stand using a matte plastic. And sizzled down below, psst, the figure comes included with a display stand that has DC down below there. Singular peg that's going to attach to the underside of Zod's feet. You only have one foot to choose from, and we're going to go ahead and put that to the side. The figure doesn't come included with any other accessories other than swappable hands, which seems a bit jarring to me because I would think that Zod should have come included with something. A spear, a scepter, a sword, or something, all starting with S's, but instead he comes with a whole bunch of interchangeable hands. Starting with those hands, the figure comes included with some closed fists. I guess, of course, if he is going to be battling the Man of Steel, minus the little hair there, the figure is going to probably want to use some punching fists. So he does have those to work with. The figure also comes included with a gripping hand, which is basically just a mirror flip to the one that's currently in the socket of his one arm here. He comes with the other one on the other side. Not really much in the way of paint, but they have made up for it, at least with a nicely sculpted hand. But again, no other accessories come included with this figure. If you want power-hungry, though, Zod, then he also comes included with this hand, this gestured hand, which is really, again, the mirror flip to this side hand that you can change out as well if you want to. Going ahead now and picking up the figure to show you the difference in hands. So he does have one gripping hand, and then he does have one power-hungry hand. I'm just going to start calling it that for the rest of this review. If you did want to have both hands to match this hand, then you just simply remove this hand and switch it out. Now, I actually thought the way that they had the arm gauntleted like this, I don't know, that's not really a word, but the fact he does have this long silver gauntlet that covers over what would have been the wrist peg, I thought it would have been a difficult time to remove the hand. Not the problem at all. Easily just remove it off like that and replace it again with the hand that you want to go with. And that just pops into place. That's definitely a better look, I feel, when it comes to General Zod. The only thing that's lacking here when having hands like this is he doesn't have, I feel, like a really grimaced face or one that's screaming. It's still a nice looking head sculpt, but I think they could have made him so much more angrier than what he is. You can still see he's consumed by power, but not to the extent that I feel the figure could have been with, again, like a real showing like teeth or like a screaming face. I guess screaming faces get dated after a while. Maybe the more neutral head sculpt they ended up going with here is probably the better choice. As for the head sculpt itself, while looking at this, I was trying to pinpoint what actor this reminded me of. Maybe not necessarily the fact that they've grown in a beard, but to me it looks like actor Jay Baruchel. I hope I pronounced that correctly. He's been in several films, like The End, for example. One of my personal favorite is She's Out of My League, a great film starring Alicia Witt. Not Alicia Witt, trying to think of the other actor. Alice Eve. That's correct. From She's Out of My League. Great movie. But that actually kind of reminds me a little bit like Jay Baruchel. I don't know if you see it yourself. The paint is actually pretty good here. I'm just going to move his arms out of the way. I feel his arms are kind of being rather intrusive. Head sculpt, though, is pretty good. I like that they did give him a bit of a sneer, although it's more of a neutral head sculpt. You can see that they've sculpted quite high beard. I think if I've left it, neglected, and decided not to shave it, my facial hair probably would match similar to that. I think it has a good profile, certainly from this side, and I think they've sculpted the hair quite nicely, going in really dark with the black, and that works quite well to complement the head sculpt. The face is a tad on the pale side, but it still, I think, is a good, successful head sculpt for Zod, especially from the DC Rebirth pages. As for the rest of his suit, it sort of lends itself to the idea of a medieval armor. One thing that they have incorporated in the comics was that the House of Zod very predominantly featured here, not only on the front of his torso, but also off to the side of his shoulder too. I think that's a nice touch. The sashed part is a soft enough plastic, at least, as well as the shoulder pads. So if you're looking at this immediately and thinking there's no way I'd be able to move the arms, no, actually you can. Although they are a little bit more hung up just because there's so much stuff going on here. It's generally quite busy, but no fault to McFarlane's team necessarily. It's just based on the way the comic design is. Yeah, it does really have a nice medieval look to it, a good vibe going for it. Colors are pretty good too. While some of the body is primarily just the black plastic, even then still to go in there, and you can see really the intricate sculpting that they've sculpted to the suit. You can see like all this additional scrolling, all this cool little almost chainmail effect that they've sculpted to the plastic. As for the top torso, I have reason to believe that this is probably still molded in this color of plastic. So the parts they would have painted would have been this area right here, the outer crest section, the lower trim, and of course like the little logo down here, the little symboling down here, and as well as the logo of Zod. Again, like the coloring on this guy, for what little there is, I think, is paint, it's still actually very effectively accomplished. Spinning a figure around so you can see it from the back. He has a decent cape, not one that gets too busy. It doesn't flow off too far to the side. It kind of keeps generally quite straight, like a drape, comes straight down. The plastic that they've used is still soft enough that you can easily move it back and forth, and it has some decently sculpting, nice sculpting really, the way they've kind of got it draping over itself. If you look really close as I can possibly get it, sort of you see this basket woven texturing that they've done to the cape. Looks really, really nice. Again, when you lifting up, I don't see there's a lot of really paint that they have used. I think, again, most of it is probably just the molded plastic. But where the figure does lack a bit in the paint, I feel they have made up for it, at least when it comes to the sculpting of the plastic. Because there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here for Zod. Everywhere that you're seeing on the figure doesn't feel like it got left off the sculpting process. Like even his gauntlets, for example, really nicely sculpted the way they've done those also. Now, for the figure's articulation, head is pretty much unlimited when it comes to the articulation, rotating that completely all the way around. Unhindered, I think was the word I was going with there. The head goes up, the head, yes, goes down. And you can have like a nice brooding look for General Zod. You can, yes, move the head also back and forth as well. As for the arms rotate comfortably all the way around. Nothing is limited or hindered there. Where you will see a bit of hindering when it comes to, of course, moving the arms out. I feel if anything, you probably can pull off about a 45-degree angle bend. I think more, though, is made up for it is the fact that he does have still the bicep swivel. He still, of course, does have the double hinge on the elbow, that if he did wield perhaps a sword, you could easily just get him holding a sword quite well, actually, with that double hinge in the elbow. The hands rotate all the way around. They are going to get a little hung up there, just like the little part that sticks out from his gauntlet. You can kind of feel the fingers, more, I guess, the thumb, because I'm rubbing against that as I'm rotating it all the way around. For the upper torso of Zod, it is on a ball joint. And then the lower torso also is on a ball joint. Rotate that all the way around. The lower part of his torso, just where his waist sits, is a softer plastic. It doesn't look necessarily like a figure diaper, something that people have coined lately with these figures. But yeah, I think the sizing of this is small enough that it doesn't look like his pants are hiked too high up. The legs go forward easily enough. The legs also go back easily enough, and you can do also the splits. Nice ratcheted joint on the insides of the legs. The figure doesn't have any thigh swivel at all. However, he does certainly have a double hinge on the knee. And they have concealed nicely the joint by adding the front plating of his armor in front of it. It's actually attached right here, so it doesn't limit the articulation. Or what's that word again? Hinder the articulation here or here. The leg is freely able to go wherever it wants. As for the feet easily can go back and forth this way. There is an ankle pivot. And General Zod also does have toe articulation. Although on this toe, it's a lot tighter. This toe, I'm actually able to bend it. Could be maybe just a little bit of extra paint build up in there. We'll be able to free that up a little bit later on after this review's finished recording. But a good-looking Zod. I really like the look of this one. If anything, I feel, again, like, I don't know if they needed to spend the budget, produce the molds of all these extra hands. I mean, yeah, a gripping pair of hands would be good. The power-hungry hands, we're just going to keep calling them those for the rest of the review, I think are probably the best hands, I think, for displaying with the figure. My own personal opinion, of course. I feel, if anything, they probably could have saved some of the plastic that they used for the hands and instead given Zod something to wield against Superman. Maybe not necessarily kryptonite related, but at the very least, they probably could have included a sword, a spear, or a scepter, all starting with Great looking figure, though, from McFarlane Toys. Finally, we have ourselves a Zod to be displayed along with the Man of Steel. One slight correction this humbled reviewer certainly wanted to make as Zod spins around in the old rotisserie. As I did say in this review, I believe most of the figure was molded in plastic rather than actually painted. Upon closer inspection, going back and looking at least the silver aspects of his armor, I believe those parts were actually painted. Most when companies are producing things in molded gold or silver plastic, you tend to see like marbling effect in the plastic. Because I don't see that in the silver parts leads me to believe that they actually went in there and painted those parts rather than actually molding them in silver plastic. What parts there aren't painted in plastic on Zod very intricately have been sculpted in a chainmail effect, really replicating the look of medieval armor, which works quite well to a character like Zod because you would imagine he'd want to go in and conquer a world. As for the plastic itself, for accessories at least, the figure has a lot of hands. Probably looking at all the other multiverse figures that we have had on this channel, I think Zod might actually take it as the most hands to come included with a figure. While I do appreciate the fact he does come included with gripping hands, he doesn't come, sadly, with any accessories. I probably could easily use an accessory that came included with another figure, but I feel like for a character like Zod, he should have come included with something. A scepter, a spear, or a sword. But he does come instead with a lot of hands. I'm going to instead, I think, display him permanently with just the power-hungry hands until I decide later on maybe which hands I want to use or which accessory I want to use for displaying the figure. The head sculpt is good. Still, again, bears, I feel, a little bit of a resemblance to actor Jay Baruchel, who I think was also in Popular Mechanics for Kids. A great show I used to watch as a kid, but a great-looking figure nonetheless. Whether he only has hands as his accessories, I think McFarlane Toys has done a great job here on DC Rebirth General Zod. A big thank you, though, to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample of General Zod that we could have a look at in this review. What do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below. Weigh in your thoughts down below in the comments section. And for your video question for today, who's your favorite Superman villain? Always like reading your comments down below. If you are new, of course, to this channel, you've been enjoying, I hope, at least the content that you guys have been seeing as of late or across the board, make sure if you haven't already done so to hit the subscribe button. To make sure as well you turn on the bell notification. The whole reasoning why we always suggest that you turn on the bell notification is, first of all, it alerts to YouTube that there are people regularly watching the content on this channel, but also to you as well. Hitting the bell notification tells you, it'll alert you when new videos are popping up on this YouTube channel. So it actually helps both of us. Make sure as well you're keeping your peepers peeled while we have wrapped up things for DC Rebirth General Zod. There will be more DC Rebirth or DC Multiverse reviews coming your way in the not so distant future. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.